I walked out to the middle of nowhere to do this. I'm still self-conscious. I'm going to be starting a new series of shorts about creativity, mostly through the lens of writing fiction. I'm going to try not to get stuck on anything current events, because I know we're all very tired. I hate writing about myself. I hate talking about myself. I hate... However, I just came out of a very significant writer's block. At this point, I've actually been writing published for 20 years. Wow. And I still live in this field. I wrote a book back in 2010. I wrote a book for example, I wrote a book back in 2010 called Things Inside. This was going to be my second novel. I wrote this not long after I blinded myself, which is another story that's connected to mental health and things like that, which I probably will touch on. But they say that says that a story where the protagonist is based on the writer is going to be boring as hell. I think Vonnegut or somebody said it more elegantly. I'm a writer, not a speaker. If you love the outdoors and nothing else, I allowed myself to be extremely self-indulgent, utterly narcissistic in writing this book with the thought, I'll just go back later and clean it up. But by the time I got done, I mean, there's no for a long time I felt like this novel was some kind of waste of time or something, that I had tainted it, and that someday I was going to dig in there and clean it up and try and get it published. But now I realize that was such a good thing for me therapeutically, and it really ties in with some of the mindset that has helped me out of the writer's block, which is not caring. It sounds completely antithetical. It's very, very, very hard to do. I still don't quite completely know how I did it. Therapy, loved ones, weed. But yeah, it's called Things Inside, and it's never going to be published, and that's okay. Letting myself write that, and then sitting with it for so long, and then letting go, I think I've gotten the full value from the story now. Now it's time to write some stuff that someone might publish. I've been at this about 20 years, and this roller coaster has major ups and downs, and sometimes it just comes to a stop in the middle of the track. In 2017, I developed a writer's block that I'd never had before. I wrote nearly nothing for 7 years. There were a lot of reasons that this came about. Some of them had to do with just life circumstances, a perfect storm of events kind of killing my ambition. But the biggest part of it, the part that was completely self-generated and paralyzing, was the amount of pressure that I put on myself, the high expectations for my writing at that time. Not just writing for writing's sake, but writing almost to survive. I've never tried to use it to put food on the table. I needed to restore my relevance in the apocalyptic horror scene, and so I needed to put out a new series. And I was also putting pressure on this for writing to really kind of be my whole world in that time, because I kind of withdrew from activities and people. I always kind of took for granted that I always have the writing. That's always been a companion and a joy to me. When I made it about things other than just doing it first and foremost for me, just for the sake of it, I built up these high expectations, but ultimately I was just digging myself down into a hole. More on that later. I'm never going to come out here and it's not going to be windy. Writer's block, ennui, anhedonia, the feeling when the one thing that you thought you could never lose, because it comes completely from inside, it comes completely from you, and then one day, gone. Most times you don't know why, and you have no idea how you're going to get it back. It can be scary, it can be disheartening. This writer's block that I just got out of, by far the longest, at about 7 damn years. I wrote one short story during that time, because I was invited to an anthology, and it gave me a little shot in the arm to the old ego. But then that was it. When the writing or the art, whatever you are, you're an artist. If it's the only thing that you have, then it's everything. A writer's block, or a creative block, which may have otherwise passed, all that enormity and pressure is gonna kill it dead. I think what I'm gonna start doing in these videos is talking about different things that I have done to overcome writer's block, or to try to overcome writer's block. There's no magic bullet, it's definitely a process. Can writing help you with writer's block? A lot of writers swear by doing daily writing exercises, writing every day, even if they're not necessarily working on something. Even if you're having problems with a particular project, or even maybe it's not writing related, maybe a writer's block is brought on by some other stress. It could just be 500 words a page, a paragraph, even a sentence, as long as it's real. Writing just to write, to remember the love of writing, to remember that you can do it, you're good at it. not only are you confident in what you can do, you're confident in your ability to get better and learn more. Remember that the writing is in you and it predates any of this adult bullshit. When you're a writer putting pressure on yourself to create something that has some type of external world value, you decide whether or not what you've written has value. When I was a kid, I wrote just for writing's sake, and there are a series of books that are lost to time. You own the story. You don't have to get every word right the first time you put it down. Remember that. I've also not been very good at journaling or talking about myself with myself in the past, and I found that combining those things in kind of a stream of consciousness journaling where I'm just kind of talking to myself, and I kind of do go in and out of elaborate metaphors and stories, even if that does not directly break the writer's block. Obviously, it can be very good for you, and anything that's good for you can be good for writing.
Let's talk real quick about one strategy that definitely did not work for me. I had the opportunity to travel to Europe about 5 years ago, so pre-COVID, and did a lot of the cliche gap year, I guess, midlife crisis stuff. Basically just trying to stimulate some kind of creative reawakening. And that result was I got high and came home. It really was, I can't call it a wasted experience, but it was kind of a wasted experience. I didn't have any sort of plan, and it played out like the lousy Hail Mary that it was. Nothing came of it, which was even more demoralizing. But that's when I started going back to therapy, which was just down the street from my place. Others might have the exact opposite experience with the same situations and stimuli, so it's got nothing to do with what I was doing necessarily. I'm not anti-drug, but it's about whether you're trying to force an epiphany. I spent way too much time trying different ways of doing that. Maybe I thought if I dissociated enough and just let my mind run, that it would work without any interference from my will or my ego, but there was no plan, just a belief that the muse was still somewhere in there, and she was, but she didn't want to mess with me until after I started getting my shit together, not the other way around. I talked about my attempts to force inspiration through extreme experience. So how about doing nothing, just passively taking in what's there, what's around you. Listening as you make your way through the mundane. If you're a storyteller, you know there's more to every scene. People watch. I mean, don't be a creep, don't stare, and don't film. But there's an office I go to where there's this innocuous print of a couple of rectangles. And because of the dim lighting in the room and the painting's position, I've repeatedly thought it to be a mirror showing behind me a cabinet next to a dark doorway. And I look at that a lot because appointments are boring. And I think about what might be through that doorway. It can seem impossible to find time to be alone with your thoughts. A lot of us are conditioned now to actively avoid it. But for writer's block, sometimes it helps to remove comfortable distractions from the equation and actually do nothing. Just take a walk down a route you never have before, or go sit down somewhere unremarkable.
Something that seems very mundane and meaningless might turn out to be fertile ground for your idle mind, your devil's workshop.
Talking shop is a great way to procrastinate, but feel like you're doing something. Declaring and discussing one's intentions feels good, but sometimes putting yourself on the hook like that does the opposite of motivating you. Right now I'm dealing with first chapter jitters. I feel like I'm at the point where further preparation would really just be stalling. Checking my progress on social media used to be helpful in the past, but again, not as a motivator. I was already having a good time writing the book. I was just reporting my progress. When I tried to use that same tracking method to keep me on the ball, to keep me accountable with my last novel several years ago, I ended up creating expectations for myself that I just couldn't meet. And then I'd worry about all the dozens of people who saw me talking myself up, and now I'm an imposter. My advice, if this resonates with you, save the declaration for after you're comfortably settled in. Others may find that accountability to, say, an online writers group works well for them. And yes, I realize I'm probably stalling right now, but I knew that the whole time, so that's the twist. Okay. There's another side to the writer's block coin I haven't really touched on. I think the only thing that's been tougher for me than not being able to write is not being able to read. Reading, I've been told, and I believe, is the most valuable education a writer can have. It's certainly how you're going to develop a sense of structure and grammar where public education falls short. When I first began submitting stories 20 years ago, my saint of an editor, my first editor, helped me to fully understand rules of which I just had a general sense of what was appropriate, what was right from reading so much. Reading was really the love of my life before writing, and trying to reclaim my focus and desire for reading fiction has been terribly difficult. It's more challenging than ever today to push away morsels of distraction and commit yourself to something substantive, something long form. And I mean, I think my blindness, there's that aspect as well, that, listening to a story, I mean, that ultimately is what's going to save my sanity is audiobooks, but it's still not the same. I think I'm actually a lot harder on myself about not reading than the writing. It's a lot more embarrassing to admit. Maybe that's why it's been harder to get back into. That, and sometimes when I listen to others work, when I listen to others writing, it reminds me of what I'm not doing. I have to reframe reading so that it simply has nothing to do with writing. Recondition my brain to just love stories again. I mean, one can never return to the time when they could fully escape into a book, be free from grown-up stress and modern a la carte reality. Or can they? That's where I have to leave this one, because I don't know. I really don't know what to do. All this time that I've been obsessing over having lost the muse, I wasn't feeding my mind at all. Do you have any suggestions? And I did one of these for Comic-Con, which is 10 years ago. It's the last time that I did any kind of appearance or anything as a writer. So tomorrow, down the street, Utah Cultural Celebration Center, we're having the Utah Writers Cantina, doing a few panels. Tomorrow I'm doing mental health and writing and horror. Got my haircuts a little shorter and quite a bit lighter, but I still don't know what to do with it. We are not going to be watching the presidential debate tonight because I guess I'm going to Uber down there tomorrow, or maybe just walk. I think it's like a mile from here. So yeah, I think my hair is just going to do whatever it wants. So I think I'm just going to chill for a little bit, maybe walk around the area a bit, and then get ready for tomorrow. I'm outside after doing the first panel. It was mental health and writing. It was good. There's so much more that I wish we could have talked about, particularly about writing as therapy. When I have a breakthrough, this is something I've been guilty of a lot. When I have a breakthrough with as far as therapy, self-work, my first thought in the past would often be, this is going to be great for so and so in a story. This is gonna really help me develop this character. And I would kind of forget, hey, why don't we apply this to ourselves as well? And journaling has helped in the sense that it's something I just started doing recently. And now that I have this kind of record that I can look back at, and that is just entirely me basically having a dialogue with myself. Now I feel like I've processed it for myself first and kind of preserved that. And now, I can perhaps apply it to a story. And we didn't even get to talk about reader's block, but that's just because, it was a really good conversation, and we got deeper into some of the other topics. I'm kind of walking till my next panel. Need to reset and be under the quiet of the power lines. I think the biggest part of this is the cantina itself. I can feel my brain growing. I do feel bad about not being comfortable with the cantina and the hanging out part. I thought I would be, but
I think just the paneling has kind of sapped me. Well, that's okay. Still met some people, meet some more people tomorrow. About a decade ago, I was working on a book, same one I'm working on now, actually. And a publisher I'd worked with in the past contacted me and said, what are you doing at the moment? What do you have? And they were looking for apocalyptic fiction, particularly zombie fiction. So at this point, I had just self-published my first self-published novel. And I was feeling a little adrift, a little uncertain, and there were a lot of other things happening around that same time in my life that weren't exactly great. So I made a decision that I needed to get my name back out there. And I was known for zombie stuff, so I was like, okay. So I came up with an idea for a new series. And I developed it, and I really got invested in the story and the characters, and I wrote the first book, and it was published. And it didn't hit, did not sell big. So now, having, for the first time, written something and put it out there chiefly for kind of cynical reasons, kind of to just try and make a little money. I basically kind of sold myself out. If you want to make money and if you want to be famous and that's what you go to do, that's not selling out, that's what you want. I shouldn't have relied on my writing as some kind of safety net. It's not what it's supposed to be. It's like an intrinsic part of me. It's like trying to use your brain as a flotation device. And when the book didn't sell, I wound up just completely defeated. It took me a long time, years. It took some therapy till I could get to the point realizing I needed to let that go. Not just that I'd done that, but also let that book go, because until I was able to do that, I wasn't going to be able to write anything. So letting go of that was the first step, and I'd say that I managed that a few years ago. So now,
First good news, I'm actually writing. This week, I pinned down the way that I wanted to start the novel. And I think the Writers Cantina helped a lot with that. So after going through several first chapters, discarding them, I'm on chapter 2. And the story actually got up in the middle of the night last night to write. It's kind of tugging at me again. It feels like the old times. It's cool. So I'm David Nowendy, and if you had a .com, I turned into a cool website. So let's head over there and give those of you who aren't familiar an idea of my writing background. Go up here and down to 2004, when I started writing video reviews and short stories for an indie magazine called The Hacker's Source, banned in Canada. And Eve Black, the publisher, put me in touch with a then new company, Permuted Press. She knew that I was into zombie stuff, and so I began getting published in anthologies and on website zines. And Empire, I started as a online serial blog format, and it was in 2008 that Permuted published it in print, and then began selling a lot more stories. I was contacted by Dark Regions Press, and we put out my first collection, Dark Entities, in 2009. Library of the Living Dead put out Unbound and Other Tales, its second collection, in 2010. And I was just putting out a lot of stories. 2011 is where also in 2010, Gallery Books, that was a new imprint of Simon & Schuster. They put out a mass market edition of Empire. And then in 2011, Empire's End, the sequel, came out. I've mentioned this novel, Things Inside, the lost novel. The Harvest Cycle from Permuted Press as well. That was 2012. Still putting out a lot of shorts all over the place. And that continued on for a few years. Severed Press put out Hell Walks. It's a kaiju apocalypse novel. And then you've got
The year after that, my first self-published works. Punk is just sort of an chapbook, just a few stories. The Three Egos, dark fantasy novel. It's the German edition of Hellwalks came out in 2016, along with The Strange Dead, and then things slow to a trickle, and then nothing for a while, until just these last couple of years. I've put out Rare Scares and more Punk, so that's it's mostly new stuff, but there's some reprints in there. And that's all she wrote until now. Everyone has mental health issues, just like with the rest of your body. Some are minor, common things, and some are not. I don't know if I ever actually believed in a romantic idea of the suffering, starving artist, but I certainly lived like I did. My mental health, like anything else in one's life, has affected the direction and tone of my work. It plays a big role in the sort of characters and conflicts that interest me. In the case of my autism, I don't consider that really a defect so much as just a phenomenon that clashes with how our world works right now, and it has most definitely been a major factor in how I tell stories. With the autism comes a fascination with certain ideas and systems. There's sort of an intellectual aesthetic, isn't quite the term, but it's hard to describe. Now, my autism shares an apartment with my anxiety, and where they overlap is their shitty little pet snake, OCD. OCD can be a powerful motivator for behavior. It can also be a powerful deterrent. And it can go off in your brain like a landmine. I've seen things, but I was never so scared as when my OCD was at its worst, because I was fully cognizant of what was happening. I understood it, but I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't do anything to make it better. In fact, everything that I tried to do to make it better made it worse. And that's what got me to go back into therapy about 12 years ago. I think my OCD tendencies, and by the way, these are all real diagnoses by human doctors that I talk to. My OCD has been an asset in organizing ideas and plotting stories. There's definitely an overlap or comorbidity with the autism and the OCD, and in that way they can both really be beneficial with writing. A lot of these mental illnesses can have a weird silver lining, but I would never say that it's worth it, or that you certainly need to be that kind of different in order to be an artist. There have also been ways in which the OCD kind of fucked with me writing-wise. When I was younger, there were certain just like arbitrary words or sentence structures or things that seemed to be offensive to my brain, and I would try to avoid using certain words. And it's just, I think just because I was so absorbed in the writing, the sort of rituals born of anxiety manifested in the writing. Now, for something with no silver lining, major depressive disorder makes you wake up feeling a weight, physical weight, like you're in a suit of armor and it's protecting you by keeping you from moving. Oftentimes, that armor's a size too small as well. Sometimes I have to remember to breathe, that's a whole other kettle of fish, but anyway. So I take pills for the depression and weed. That's all I can do there. Well, I could take better care of my body, but we all know what a vicious circle that is. I still need to do it. I'm legally blind due to a chop suey attempt in 2008 in which I poisoned myself. Being unable to work in traditional jobs is like it's like a permanent sick day. Not a Ferris Bueller, but a legitimate sick day where you feel fucking shitty about it. And you're just watching time and money slip away. That said, we do live in bizarro times, and there are a lot of opportunities to forge your own way with, assistance. Of all these things, the blindness has been the easiest to overcome, logistically, I guess. I don't know if I've ever totally processed what I did to myself. No longer being able to read print with the naked eye. That has, it's the worst thing. Easily. And that's contributed a great deal to what I'm calling my reader's block. And I do feel like reading or listening to books can in itself be therapeutic, and I want so much to get back to that place. But this anhedonia, lack of interest or satisfaction in the things that normally do the trick. And I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I've locked myself out of my own head. Hopefully, talking about it will jar things around a little bit. Seems to have so far in terms of this series and my writer's block. If you're dealing with suicidal ideation, please do reach out to someone. I've been on both sides of it. I truly do understand how difficult it is to keep pushing yourself along. Sometimes you feel like you're only doing it for them, not yourself. But if there's a chance that you can manage or relieve the pain without going all the way, without dying, I'd be a hypocrite if I insisted that everybody just, keep on keeping on, fake it till you make it, everything, be fine. That's no way to live. But I do want you to know that I'm really pulling for you. We're all pushing boulders uphill, some hills far steeper than others. Some days it feels like the boulder's sitting on your chest. You're not alone, though. If you're hearing this, you are not alone. And I hope that's not too cornball. I'll talk more about writing stuff next time. Take care. I've been thinking about the differences in how I'm approaching this book compared to previous ones. One thing I've definitely done is just gotten rid of arbitrary deadlines and word targets, word count goals. I do have a goal to write every day, but again, I'm not forcing myself to just come up with just X number of any words. And I think that doing that, I'm still keeping pace with the kind of output that I had previously. I think when I'm at my best, I write in sort of a conversational style. And I've decided to lean into that. And I really, in some ways, I'm writing this in a way, new for me, in terms of how relaxed the approach is and how much I seem to be drawing more out of the story by kind of taking my time that way. And another thing is that this is the time when things are going pretty okay, when I would usually say, okay, well, I don't need to go to therapy as much, and I'd start falling off and then just stop going. Instead, we're trying to figure out some new things to work on, new territory to get into, since we've finally cracked this one after 5 years. Circling back to reader's block, I'm still at square zero on that one. It's like I have to recondition my brain to want to read again. I've talked about screen time, bite-sized media, and idle entertainment, and how these systems of instant, easy gratification and constant distraction can eat into creative ambition. The easier it gets to synthesize happiness, the less we have to work for real satisfaction. The rest we have to, look within ourselves to rise to the occasion. Maybe that's a little much. I have noticed as I've been writing that other activities that used to pass the time are less stimulating. I think my brain is waking up and craving more now that I'm getting that creative high from the writing. I was thinking about the idea of comfort shows or comfort games. Things you put on or do for familiar background noise, a no-thought routine. Nowadays, we're so used to being bombarded with stuff. We want so much going on, and yet we don't really want to think about a lot of it. When it comes to comfort reads, I generally don't reread things just because my memory retains so much that my mind will kind of wander off, unless it's been a long time since I've read it. That being said, I'm 43 and things are starting to fall apart. So I'm wondering if maybe I could revisit some old reads and have them be kind of new again. Even if I just have audio books going in the background in my ears, it might be a good trend to follow for a while instead of just playing music or live streams. while I'm doing stuff. Comfort reads. I'm going to try that out and I'll let you know how it goes.